Hello. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm really curious about my talk. We'll see what I think about it. So first, I wanted to lay a first thought, a basis thought, a quote by Miriam Meckel, who said that a machine that is truly intelligent, more intelligent than most humans, would be the most narcissistic insult that humans possible. I think this narcissistic insult, as humans are neurodiverse, this narcissistic insult is very well known to neurodivergent people. They know. We know this from every day. We know that we live in a society that lives in an intelligence cult, cultivates an intelligence cult. So other cultures insult the honor. They insult their mother, for example. And people here would say, "They don't know my mother. I don't care about this." But if my intelligence is insulted, then it will become personal. I think this is the point where I will create a feeling of unease with many people. My topics are neurodiversity and artificial intelligence, and I think I've been thinking about this for decades, and now I've reached a point where these topics appear so often that and so are so virulent that this is a sign for me that the history of human intelligence needs to be told in a new way. And it's not only about being insulted by machines, but also how we can live up to these new developments, especially people who are read as neurodivergent. And that's what I want to argue today. I have so many arguments, but I can't bring them all today, but I can bring some. I want to make an example for this insult. A professor went into retirement, and she wished for a final event where nobody held speeches people should give a rap from every discipline, and I am the leader of a discipline, and I talked to my colleagues, and we need a rap to saying goodbye to the deacon, and everybody turned away and had appointments, and I was sitting there alone, and I needed to find a rap, and it took months. I worked a lot on these. I thought about this, what topic could be that fitting to the University of Hamburg. There's been existing as more than 100 years. It was the first university founded under democratic principles, and there was Ernst Cassirer, for example, there was the first president of the University of Hamburg, and he said science language exists mostly to say things in a more concise way. And I remembered, and that's how I thought about Ernst Cassirer, and then when I'm at university, what do I notice? About the language? Well, we talk a lot about abbreviations. KfD, KVMW, whatever, like German abbreviations for things. Inklusop. You don't know what this is about, and especially it's not translatable. But you don't. But if you understand this, people see that you belong to the university. It excludes others, but I thought about text about a rap should be maybe about abbreviations. The deacon wrote ASAP, as soon as possible. You might know that abbreviation. That is the speak that is used, plays a lot of huge role at the university, and everything needs to go really quickly. But after long thinking, that should be a rap text. There could be a rap text, and I thought about this rap text that about this topic that about. Okay, he's rapping. I can't really translate this, but it's about the ASAP and explaining what ASAP means, and so on and so on. And then it talks. And then I stole the rest of the lyrics of the Fantastischen Vier, which is a German rap band, and I found out that is a lot of work, and I played a keyboard riff, then needed to find a guitar riff, and then I needed to convince colleagues to come with the bass guitar and the drums, and I found someone who played the rhythm guitar. Lots of work. And last night, my daughter showed me an app. I think it's called Suno AI, and I entered into this app. I asked about write a rap about University of Hamburg, and it didn't take more than a minute, and it was ready. It sounded good. It didn't sound as good that I wanted to play it here, but it would have been enough. I wouldn't have had to move my mouth. But I could have saved my work. And it's for sure a grievance here that you work so long, and then the AI takes away for such. But I'm not only allowing myself to be insulted by AI, but in my work I work a lot with children, for example, on the autism spectrum, and a boy with a Fuhrman-McDermott syndrome or a girl with serious coffin syndrome. These are really intense, severe forms of autism. People for whom the language that we are using is uncomprehendable. And to learn this language, AI can help in any form. So these people take in so much that they are not able that we think that words that we accept as similar, that they are actually they think that they're different. So if I say car and car, you would all notice that I've said the same, but they wouldn't. They would notice so many differences that these differences, to listen to these differences, hearing these differences is a strength. But in this case, in reality, you can never speak a word exactly the same. It's impossible. You can't say the word in the same way twice, but this means that the child can't understand what we're doing. It hears the same words. And without and that's why these kids are speaking very late, maybe at 6 years old, and but then they formulate incredibly complex sentences, because then they suddenly solve the riddle. And intelligence comes from discovering, from noticing. You might say they have too much of it, and as you want. Josef Schovanik, a pioneer of neurodiversity movement, for example, said at the age of 6, he was put into special needs schools, speaks today 7 languages, has successfully studied physics and philosophy, and is a pioneer of neurodiversity movement. And he says intelligence is something that is calculated, valued differently in society. In the U.S., it's IQ. In China, it might be the Mandarin and education. In France, it's the higher education. But every time, it's those people who are developing these tests are the people who are most high in the hierarchy. So people who are considered the most intelligent define what is most intelligent, and that is the problem was always the problem of small groups in the society, and now it concerns the entire society, because now ChatGPT-3, for example, the chatbot is said to have an IQ of 155. Well, 155, that means that this chatbot is more intelligent than 99% of humanity. We have ChatGPT-4 and ChatGPT-5. How intelligent might that be? So the super intelligence that is enslaving all of us, that is going to so many smart people are saying this. Like, for example, Yuval Harari, that he fears that the intelligence is at the latest going to, when you're going to be afraid that the human intelligence will, as soon as human intelligence becomes afraid that that it will be turned off, then it will start enslaving humanity. You notice that is one narrative. The other narrative is that comes back to the 1960s. We look at artificial intelligence in the 1960s. Odyssey in 2001, Stanley Kubrick's film, invented an AI that is more intelligent than a human, that was afraid of being turned off and only could be tricked with a paradoxy. And the other line with Stanley Kubrick, and we're also debating whether Stanley Kubrick wasn't an autist on the autism spectrum, so he might have been neurodivergent. That it makes clear that those people who we often as is perceived as non-intelligent, that are creating this artificial intelligence that says all humankind isn't intelligent. The other line is also Stanley Kubrick. The film he never ended, AI. You might have heard Steven Spielberg finished that film. It came into the movies in the cinemas. Steven Spielberg is neurodivergent too. He says is a legasthenic. Dyslexic. So this film says that AI might be the better human, and remember the boy who's an artificial intelligence and has a passion for the story of Pinocchio and is more human than all humans in this film. This is a different story, and AI is better and more protection needed version of mankind. Maybe you've seen the film Creator, where a small child embodies the AI. That has the passion to turn off weapons with a Buddhist kind meditative practice, and better human. And that is worth protecting. So we have both narratives. Both are stupid, both are silly, obviously, but we like these narratives, and obviously both narratives brings us to the cinema. We like them, and these both narratives lead to that we don't understand. That we don't discover the chances, because computer can speak the word car multiple times in the same way, and that helps people on the autism spectrum to learn these languages. My Canadian colleague Joy Lamvini worked on the project Peekaboo Simon. It's this little robot. If you go to the entrance of the of Republica, you see the little robot humanoid, and that I've seen it twice. And you see a larger robot as well that follows your view. And these figures help children on the autism spectrum to learn human mimics. And my colleague John Bulimvini worked on that, and this colleague found that when she turned her laptop, that her face wasn't discovered, recognized, and she's a person of color, has dark skin, and that she noticed that people with dark skin are discovered, recognized much worse by AI, and researched it and found a book, wrote a book called Unmasking AI that shows that AI and diversity don't go along very well at all. So AI is a lot about averages, and it searches through the internet that isn't intelligent at all, but it feeds itself from really stupid ideas, and diversity and I can also be contrasts. So she researched and that how a woman who was pregnant in the 8th month, and the woman couldn't have been the robber at a bank robbery, but the AI completely fails with dark faces. So the AI just recognized her as a bank robber, but she couldn't have been it. And even in this simple area, that we have 5 genes determining our skin color. So our body height is determined by 1,000 genes. And if we're talking about neurodiversity, and when it's about 10,000 genes that work in our brain, and the diversity working in our brain is much larger. So the genes are working in our brain, and so human brains from the far look very, very similar. But if you go closer, then you can't find two single brains that look the same. So things that we value a lot, like the gender, can't be determined in a brain. You can't, it's impossible to determine. I find this quite interesting. And so no brain is alike. And if you see snowflakes from the far, the same. And no snowflake is the same from on a microscope. And this is the same in the brain. So, so the brain, the cortex, so the core of the brain, that is
every single nerve cell is as complicated as a whole city. Every single nerve cell has about 10,000 connections with other brain cells. Those are maybe 5,500. If you multiply that by 86 million, you end up in the billions of neural links that are part of the central nervous system. That's a whole lot. If you have a cubic millimeter of the brain, you find so many synapses as there are stars in the Milky Way. And that's how you see that neurodiversity is an absolutely clear truth. We're all different. Even twins are so different in the structure of the central nervous system that the genes are insufficient to completely control the totality of the synapses. And that's why these twins already have completely different ways to look at the world, and that determine how different their brain are. Neurodiversity is something that is one of the best proven facts of science, and it's a wonder that we missed that for centuries. The New Diversity movement was founded 2011 in Syracuse, New York. 2011, it was an initiative of the autism rights movement, and they assumed that they need to build a collective or to unionize, because when people come together in solidarity, that's when they can achieve power. And all of these, what they do is they define a whole spectrum of quote-unquote disorders that are neurodiverse, and they're seen as being read as neurodivergent. You run the challenge that you're seeing as less intelligence. In the 80s, I was researching for the perception of form in children. Children who are read as learning disabled. My hypothesis is that their perception is just different. The form for the way we perceive form and the laws that we have in aesthetics around that are just perceived differently by these kids. That was my science project, and we actually managed to prove this hypothesis. And then one day I went to a school where I wanted to do some research, and we were investigating geometric topics. And then the director of the school came to me, great, you're researching geometry. Can you please teach math to this class, because one of my teachers just got sick, and otherwise I don't have anybody who can teach math. And I was trying to answer, but she just pushed books at me, and then it was just about calculus, and it was a mathematical competition who could calculate the fastest. And I had exercises that I had to do with them. The children were happy to shout out the answers, and I was thinking, whew, I managed to do it. It's going great. And then suddenly one of the children was smiling at me, and was when I asked what is 60 over 4, and he smiles at me and says 14. And if you now give me the challenge or basically ask me to do any math problem, I would be very hard pressed to give the right answer, because right now I'm very occupied, and that makes it hard for the brain to solve these challenges. I wasn't sure. I basically remember my own time in school. Nowadays, when you get an answer that you don't expect, you ask around the room and ask, does anybody else have a different answer? You don't say anymore, this is wrong, sit down, because it makes a difference. That's the problem. Even if you ask and they realize that it's wrong, it's the same as if you just told them flat out that it's wrong. So I needed to buy myself some time. So maybe they just want to recalculate. And I asked, how did you get to that? And the answer was, I did some calculations. So I said 10 over 4 is 2 raised 2. And because the 2 occurs 6 times, I calculated 6 times 2, and I got 12, and then the same again for the rest. And because the rest is the same, I reached 2, and then sorry, I missed that. I was so convinced that I was checking if there was a problem in the printed exercise, because I had a hard time checking it. And then I asked him, what do you see when you calculate this? And he said, I see 10 people that are sitting around a table, and they're all putting down their hands. So now I had an image in my head. So imagine you're sitting there, you're walking from person to person on that table. So this pupil with learning disabilities visualizes a 60. He sees 6 people with 10 fingers, and he's walking along these people and trying to check. So he's always calculating 10 over 4, and he gets 2 rest 2. And he now has to keep telling himself, this isn't 4, it's 2 rest 2. So he calculates the 2 by 6, which is correct, so he gets the 12, and then he takes the rest, which is also there 6 times, but you still have to calculate this over 4. So he has to tell himself it's not 4, so that's why he divided the 12 over 6. And if he had calculated by 4, it would have been correct, and it would be fine, and it would be in accordance with the solution. But he said 14 because he has actually a mathematical gift. He is able to visualize numbers. That means we're actually losing a lot of highly intelligent people by frustrating them, by insisting on the correct answer. So this reminds me of my own time at school. I'm a synesthetic. So I see a gray 60 that meets a green 4 and dissolves. The 60 dissolves by touching the 4 into a light green 40 and a golden 20. The 40 dissolves into an almost translucent 10, and the golden 20 dissolves into a golden 5, and together that is a 15. You already realize my images in my head don't have anything to do with mathematics. They're pretty rational. That's probably because of a mutation on the 16th chromosome that results in seeing colors when thinking of numbers and also letters. And for me, that led to me thinking or feeling some solutions were better just from a color perspective than the ones that are actually correct, which is a bit of a problem for me. So, and then the real problem is that you're not seen as intelligent. This is a great problem with IQ tests as a whole. I was told I have an IQ of 155, but they only took the verbal part of the test. So there is a Wechsler adult intelligence case. It's called WISE, if maybe you know this. It's an international test methodology that is it was gauged on 2,500 U.S. Americans. So it's a decent scale for this kind of gauge, but apparently they're all stupider than GPT-3, or at least most of them, which obviously is wrong because you only check the verbal part of the test. Because back then you couldn't enter images into ChatGPT back then. Now you can, but so clearly we only gauge the verbal intelligence of ChatGPT-3. And the interesting part is ChatGPT-4 actually only has an intelligence or an IQ of about 85, which is a whole range lower than before. So clearly the visual part drags it out. And so these intelligence profiles that are highly contradictory, especially on kids in the autism spectrum, so they're almost disabled, but also clearly gifted in other parts. So, for example, some of them are very gifted in math, and then they have an IQ of below 80 in language skills, for example. So you can already tell something is weird here. It's a strange way to measure it. You're having a hard time getting the extremes synced up. So the intelligence profile is not very uniform. And how is that connected? Back in the 80s, I already tested symbolic AI for intelligence, and I realized that symbolic AI basically solved any intelligence test quicker and better than any human if I write the program correctly. The intelligent thing isn't the computer, it's the program that I'm entering. And I already knew in the 80s that symbolic AI was already smarter than the artificial intelligence of today, and that is stunning. So why is artificial intelligence that we we perceive as a narcissistic insult, we basically think that the Matrix will enslave us as humans, like Yuval Harari. So how can that be dumber than in the past? It depends on the structure, or it's determined by the structure of the intelligence tests. We think that these tests measure something that they actually don't. May I pose a question to you? You just yell out loudly what you think when you hear it. I could take any kind of intelligence test, but I'm going to pick one that is simple to do here, and you need to find a sequence of numbers. I give you 2 numbers, and you give me the third one that will complete the sequence. 2, 4, 6. And now you? You heard 8 very loudly. And everyone who said "et" usually get the point in the test, because that's what we expect in these kind of tests. Someone said 10. Think about it. If you take 2 plus 4, you get 6. If you use 4 plus 6, you get 10. Is it a stupid solution? Is it more stupid than 8? No, not really. So what about the solution minus 15.37? It's obviously not going to give you a point. You're not going to get a point for 10. You're not going to get a point for minus 15.37. But if you look at an old computer from the 80s, if you take the Lagrange interpolation and program that into the computer, then the program will give you a formula that it can reason about, that will tell you why the solution that it gives you is correct. I can actually prove to you that minus 15.37 is a solution, but you're still not going to get any points. And now imagine there are people who are neurodivergent. Maybe you heard by David Tennant. He's on the autism spectrum. I don't remember how many digits of pi he can calculate, but he could easily calculate the minus 15.37. He's just not going to get any point. And you definitely can be too intelligent for intelligence tests, and it's actually even worse. If you want to be good in an IQ test, it's not enough to be good at calculating. And being able to calculate well is not a sign of intelligence at all. It's a sign of being able to calculate well. But imagine you could calculate that well, then you're not going to get a point. What is expected of you, really? You are expected to guess what the developers of the test wanted to hear from you. So you actually are being graded on being that on more on social intelligence, really. And what AI is now doing, and they're measuring the social intelligence. AI is not getting dumber in that way. It's actually getting better in guessing what you want to hear. There's a simple way I can show this to you. There was a large test done in the USA. It was a rather simple test. You take a circle and 2 circles. you have one encircled in the other, and you're asked if the circle is moving around the larger circle, how many revolutions did it do? You basically have to take the radiuses of the two circles, and then you see that the larger one is 3 times as large as the small one. So one of the solutions was 3, one was 6, one was 9.5, and those were the solutions suggested. And the interesting part is none of them are right, because in reality you have to calculate the graph of the center point of the circle, and then the correct solution is actually pi. And that means that no one could solve that test, and it was actually incorrect because the test was just wrong. So ChatGPT actually guesses 3, so it would get a point, but it's still wrong. So it's gotten better at simulating an average intelligence. So my hypothesis is that ChatGPT is actually sort of circling on averages. So the mediocrity of the AI will probably actually make us worse, because it just tries to prove itself right. And I think the only ones who will be left out from this will be the people that are neurodivergent, because they're not part of the average. And I see a great future for these people that we now read as neurodivergent, because they're special. And I would like them to not just see them as different, but we would need to transform our work life and our education system in ways that encourages them. And we can already see that in some parts this is already working. For example, in the USA, that you don't get a lot further in the improvement of AI without neurodivergent people. For example, they were comparing the numbers of neurodivergent people in Harlem and Utrecht and in other cities, and you can see that the number of people, or that the number of neurodivergent kids in areas where new AI is being developed is much higher than in other areas. So
if you find if a child is on the autism spectrum diagnostically, and the father says to the mother, well, everything that applies to the child is also applies to me. Wow. And that the father might be an Airbus engineer or something. So we have many people in society who are neurodivergency, and we don't know about them. We should have about 1 million people in Germany. If you take the English-speaking space in German as a number, we should have about 1 million people with autism, on the autism spectrum in Germany, but we only have about 500,000 diagnoses. So they're talking about a fashion diagnosis, but it can't even be, because we have less than there should be. So 5% of all children. So the number increased from 5% to 6.1%. So there should also be 6.1% of adults with ADHD, but we only have about 2% of people with ADHD diagnosis. But there's a lot of these people spend a lot of power, energy to be read as normal, and this energy gets lost in our society. That we would actually need this creative energy, but they just use it for masking. So, for people who who can't speak, they force them to read lips, learn to read lips. If you read lips, you need a full brain, and you only if you're really good, you can only understand about 50% of the of what is said. You can't develop mentally, because you spend all energy into adjusting to normality, to norm. So we have so many neurodiverse people who do who are able to put their energy into their studies instead of adjusting to the norm. And this saving of energy, this I would wish to for neurodiverse people, because it also needs energy. Nobody, just as an example, nobody would get to the idea of a deaf person studying with me that you, if you would, if a deaf person studies with me, you wouldn't get to the idea that you take away their benefits, study benefits. And with ADHD people, this happens. If you say that, if you say to deaf people, hey, you've got good marks, we'll send the sign language interpreters home, nobody would do that. So we have a great potential, and that exceeds artificial intelligence, that we would get a lot, but we're not using that. We spent $250 million for ChatGPT to train it. And most of that was energy, and you need so much energy, 700,000 liters of water to get ChatGPT 3 to run, to just cooling water. Neurodiverse people just would get that for free. You would, the brain doesn't need more than 2 bananas a day. So if you would use this resource for good, so Gene Roddenberry, if you remember them, the inventor of Star Trek, he said we shouldn't tolerate our differences, we should celebrate them. Now he's a science fiction author, and you could say that will happen in the future, but I think why don't we start today with that, with celebrating our neurodiversity. Thank you. Thank you so much for your attention, for listening, for giving me your neurodiversity, and I'm really touched that you gave this topic that so many people push away, that you gave it so much interest. I think I didn't look to the. I might have some time for some questions. I didn't. Yes, it works. If you want to ask some questions, there's microphones around. You can ask them. Thank you for that speech, for that presentation. Someone said you have to rebuild the school system to use this. Our current school system is much more about sitting still and following rules. Are there current approaches that make this? So yes, I do. I've been researching a lot about this. Thanks for the questions. We're here in Berlin, and so in Berlin, Heinrich Heine said that even the trees are standing still, and so in Prussia, Friedrich, the king of Prussia, wanted to have soldiers and people who can follow rules, and the school is exactly about that: being able to read, to understand laws, to being able to calculate, to get to the end of the month with your salary, and that worked really well. That worked in a time where you didn't need very many intellectuals. You needed a few smart people, and the rest was just presented as stupid. In the time of artificial intelligence, This is we're changing. We need intelligence everywhere. If you think about the climate crisis, everywhere we need we need smart solutions, creative solutions. For peace, for everywhere, we need creative solutions, creative people. We can't afford to let even one single human brain go, and that is happening everywhere in schools and daily. We have OECD tests. It's the same about, you have to, in OECD tests, you have to guess what the OECD people want, not, it's the same with the intelligence tests. And that costs so much brain power that energy that many people lose their creativity. What is the solution? Well, the solution is, because brains are the most complex material in known material in the universe, we should accept that there is intelligence. We should assume that there is intelligence. The only question is, how can I nurture this intelligence? What is it made of? And there's for sure some intelligence that has potential. The question is there are these kind of do these kind of schools exist? So, for example, yes, there's Montessori schools. They were very inclusive, that follow this approach, and they say you have to prepare individually for each child. Same classes for everybody don't hit a mark, and I force others to learn things that aren't good for people, and I believe that's the way. What I'm saying here is not really practical, because we have a really big lack of teachers. There's only 80% capacity in schools. We would need much more teachers in schools to do this. I have Thies Rabe, the school senator, until recently. I told him, and he said, "You told me you spent money for two Elbphilharmonie. There's a big building in Berlin and Hamburg, a very expensive one. You are asking me to do this," and I said, "Yes, I'm asking you to do this."
Thanks a lot for the talk, and especially for it being so resource-oriented. There's one thing I didn't get. You say every single brain is different, and then you still classify them as neurodivergent and neurotypical. If we're all different and special, then aren't we all neurodiverse? Thanks for the question. We're all neurodiverse, but we're not neurodivergent. That's what at this Congress was decided, that some people are read as atypical. If someone is giving you a monologue about washing machines, then it's possible that this monologue isn't of interest to you, and this person gives you a strange vibe, and then you would read that person as neurologically divergent. And in many people on the spectrum, you would see this fascination with things that they can totally control, because it calms down their nerve system. They're not just hyperactive, they're hypersensitive. And for their nervous system, they need things that they can control completely. Cisterne and Orticon found that twice as many people who are neurodivergent are in IT, because you have more control over the way things work than in other areas. I'm trying to come up with which ones, but so for example, the ones where you have to talk to people a lot, because people are usually yeah, they surprise you, whereas machines, they don't disappoint. They usually do what they tell them to. And that's still how we read neurodivergence these days. But if you define neurodiversity as you did, as a radical truth, and not try to set ourselves apart, because then we don't need the neurodivergent as a name anymore. It's just historically inaccurate. But thanks a lot for the question. It's a great point. I would like. I'm here. There you are. Sorry. It's great if you have a face for the voice. Okay, I would like to get back to the topic of AI and neurodiversity. I would pose the thesis that this might actually be a dream team. On the one hand, it could be true, and on the other hand, it could be great if this were true. One of my kids has a strong dyslexia problem, and the only thing we could do at school, we used ChatGPT 4.0 to build an assistant for him that helps him break down texts and try to perceive it via voice, and the accumulating new knowledge is very difficult with neurodivergency. I'm sticking to that topic because it's usually assumed that you have to read a lot in order to learn a lot, and just makes it easier for him because he's in a reading dialogue with the AI. And I'm telling you, this is a dream team because it helps break down barriers that are part of the normal school career. And the other point about the dream team is, and this is more of a question, if you accept neurodivergence or neurodiversity as a fact, is there not a need for systems that grade you a lot and assess you to adjust? We would actually need to have a much broader spectrum of answers that are allowed, for example, in a test. Currently, it's a very narrow set of answers that are allowed, as you said before, and those are just two ideas that I had during the lecture. And this is clearly at the center of my talk. Thanks for the question. So the first question, LAS, this is a dyslexia disorder. It has always been seen as a disorder. Did you know that Agatha Christie, that she was a legasthenic? She is one of the most successful crime authors in the whole world. So, great books you are often the product of people who can't write as well. Think back to Steven Spielberg. Maybe some of you are too young for you. Some of us still remember him as a director. He could not read scripts. He had to work really hard and in order to perceive them, but the success was so much greater. People with dyslexia problems usually write more interesting and better. They're not graded as well because they're bad with syntax, with the punctuation, for example, and small spelling mistakes. So if they have to spend a lot of brain powers on these kind of rules, you're kind of blocked in the creativity. And kids with these kind of quote-unquote disorders, they are the ones who really put the content at front and center. And usually we hinder them because we're telling them this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, for very minor mistake. And it would be great if we can use AI to help them, because then we get better results. I'm looking at people with Down syndrome or trisomy 21. They usually have problems in the dyslexia department as well, and they love to check different texts. And we usually give them a lot of stuff on offer. They love writing, but they usually are not very good at this. However, the moment you give them content produced by AI and they're allowed to change them and adjust them up until the point where they made the text their own, then they really start enjoying writing. And this is a blessing, really. If you think about dyscalculia, one of the greatest scientists ever, David Hilbert, one of the people who made computers possible, he most likely was a dyslexic. His son was diagnosed, and for him it's extremely likely. So think about it. A person who is official dyscalculant was the one who made the computer possible. So sometimes it really feels like we hinder these very highly creative people by frustrating them with punctuation, with word order, with all of these things. They will lose their potential. But if we do it the way you just described, it can be a dream team. The problem is AI is really not there yet. It's not good enough. It's usually still better in the hands of, for example, a surgeon or so like a scalpel is not something good in itself. So what he's saying is it's a tool. It's not good or bad. They help us solve intellectual tasks. They're not intelligent. They're only as intelligent as the people who give their input. And that's why we don't just lose a lot of types of jobs. We will gain a lot of new jobs that will shape and mold the AI into job functions that we need them in. It's already the case. There are a lot of people who check ChatGPT and try to mold it. There will be a lot of new job profiles. For example, people with ADHD, they're usually, for example, better in detecting flattery or lying. People in the autism spectrum that see details that no one else sees, very fine details. For great texts, I would use people or employ people that have dyslexia because they're great at it. There are so many examples. I know people with dyslexia who are great in the acting department as directors and so on, because they have a great feeling for text, but we need to open the doors for them, and currently that's not the case currently, and I'm sorry I'm out of time, but I could go on for hours and hours. As you see, I'm very passionate about this, but before you carry me off stage, I want to thank you for the great questions that really helped me out. Thanks a lot.